Hello everyone, I am Force McFreelava, and this is the recap bit of episode 36 of Speedplay Maya. It might just be its own separate thing, probably not though. At any rate, we can take a quick look at the world as we've left it. From our Mesoamerican beginning, we have gone ahead and taken over everything that we could in North America, without of course filling in all of the interior just yet. If we are to make a time lapse going forward into the future, I imagine that the AI will inevitably fill out these areas and manage to colonize the entire interior by some point. We'll see how long it takes. We did manage to fully colonize South America though, which is kind of nice. If we take a quick look at the religious map modes, there are a few exclaves of Catholicism and Protestantism in South America, as well as a little bit up in North America. We hadn't really been targeting specific areas so much as just areas that were quick to get, which is why there are small pockets just throughout various little areas. Although honestly that isn't too much of a concern. We did take religious ideas as opposed to humanist, which was a bit bad for us in the short term, but in the long term I think it will really help. If we go ahead and look over at our three vassal states, being Granada, who we didn't really do anything with, Tunis, then Greece, our Mediterranean vassal states, we'll see that they actually did do a decent job of converting their regions over to Mayan religion. Weirdly successful over here in formerly Sunni Tunis, and poor Granada, we didn't really get very much use out of them, but they did their work as well. We also have the vassal state of Medri Bahri, which has also done decently well spreading our religion. The Greeks, we've managed to defeat their rebellions. I'm a little bit sad that we weren't able to really just get rid of this Commonwealth Balkans and the Ottomans and Iraqi Arabia, although that would have been quite a lot, and once we actually did manage to achieve that, if we would have, then we would have gotten a large amount of liberty desire from the Greeks in these areas, which would have been unfortunate in and of itself. We also never really managed to finish off the conquest of sub-Saharan Africa, although we did get all of the trade that we need, and we got Tunis their control over the wasteland, so that looks kind of nicer, which I guess is really the most important thing. Medri Bahri is doing fairly well. We never really quite managed to take over Mombasa, but once again, we have all of the trade company regions. That's the important thing. Luba, independent, not allied to anyone, also not really relevant trade-wise or in any other way. Leonese East Africa is breaking apart, which is kind of nice, and basically is one of the few testaments to European imperialism still left standing, as well as French Quelimane, which we never bothered to take because they have a fort on it, and I never felt it necessary to dedicate an army to that province and that province alone. Over here we have a small pocket in India, which we haven't actually begun converting except for just a little bit, and our ally Bengal, who is Sunni. So that's pretty convenient. We'll hopefully be able to, as the AI, just go ahead and expand our presence in India with the help of the Bengalese. I also just allied Muscovy because right before the end I forgot that we were already over our diplomatic relations limit, so that was kind of a mistake, but not too much of one. In fact, it looks as though our new protectorate doesn't actually take a diplomatic relations slot, which is nice. We just had to release them because I accidentally went very much over our extension, or our overextension, finishing the conquest of Mayan Malaya. Luckily, they're in a different trade zone, and protectorates do give you trade income, so it isn't the worst thing either way. It might even give us more, since it doesn't have to worry so much about the autonomy effects, plus 75% for not being states. And it did get us over the 50% here in Mayan Malaya. We also managed to finish the conquest of the vast majority of Australia, besides that one Ottoman territory, which we probably could have gotten in the last Ottoman War if we had been so forward-thinking. That being said, that is basically every single colonial nation territory has been destroyed, except for Terra Austriel does have one province left. So they managed to escape, how dare they. At any rate, though, all things considered, our empire is doing decently well. We have really filled the role that the Europeans filled in our real history by getting colonial presences all throughout Africa and all throughout the Spice Islands and whatnot. That being said, we definitely don't have as good of a presence in the Spice Islands as the Europeans did historically at this point, although the French are kind of just falling into revolution and just all sorts of nonsense, as they are now a state centered in Papua New Guinea. Which is interesting. The Ottomans really did step up their presence, which is interesting since they only have about one single... Wait, that's not even an Ottoman port. I guess the Ottomans have somehow managed to trade out of their Anatolian ports all the way across and over and into the Spice Islands. So that's very impressive for them. Going back to Europe and all of the events going on in there, before we even talk about all these borders, let's go ahead and see that the Protestant Reformation kind of took off over in the British Isles and not really anywhere else, a bit of France and a bit of the Germanys. Now, if we do go back to political, well, alright, so Austria is definitely the winner of Europe. That we can say without really, well, that we can just say pretty easily. The interestingly Catholic Netherlands is doing decently well, although without really anything of a trade empire. And the Commonwealth is also a pretty large winner, with the Livonian Order just kind of chilling in their area. Sweden could very nearly form Scandinavia if it weren't for giant super Austria that will make that totally impossible. Tuscany, despite being Catholic, is just holding on doggedly to Rome, which is kind of interesting. Castile did end up getting free again, and Aragon, which for several episodes I refused to admit was a Iberian power, is basically the only power left in Iberia. France, once our biggest enemy, has completely collapsed in Europe, and we saw their capital and all those areas in Papua New Guinea. So France is basically a non-entity at this point. I imagine if we do continue this with a time lapse, they will cease to exist in the European mainland. Scrolling out a bit, we see Muscovy doing slightly poorly, although they are still filling out all the Siberian nonsense, as is their way. The Chinese states have fallen into civil war, although they've more or less consolidated themselves. Our big plan to get a Chinese empire did end up just turning into this single province and a huge quagmire. So I'm kind of glad we didn't actually end up going deeper into that. I also don't think we would have gotten all that much trade income from them. And even if we did, we really were at the limits of what we could do at that point anyway. Alright, so all things considered, let's go ahead and take a look at a few of these ledger tabs. We have the largest army in the world, just above the Austrians, and then the Netherlands, then Bengal, our ally. Commonwealth, Ottomans, Muscovy. Commonwealth and Austria seem to be having a bit of a struggle between themselves, so that's pretty great news for us. I'm not sure where exactly the Netherlands falls in their diplomatic relations and whatnot. Whoops, let's see. Let's go back to the right one. It looks as though they're allied to Austria, which really just increases the Austrians' strength. Muscovy's currently fighting the Commonwealth, so that's a little unfortunate for us. Aragon and the Ottomans. Alright, so that's interesting. They're fighting the Ottomans, but they're allied to Aragon, so Commonwealth might be about to decline a bit. We also see that they do have cores on a lot of areas controlled now by Austria, which would really seem to indicate that they lost the last war and lost it very hard. Alright, back to the ledger. So that's a decent overview of who the most powerful countries are at the moment on land. At sea, we'll take a look, I guess, first at sailors. Tunis is just ridiculously sailor-filled, with us being second, followed by Naples, interestingly enough. Tiny little Naples. And then Sweden, which makes some sense. Great Britain, Netherlands, Malacca, which is... alright, that's interesting. If we go by total numbers of ships, Mayans, then Ottomans, then Netherlands, then Commonwealth. Commonwealth being a strange one to have that many ships, which I guess explains in part why they're not doing so well on land with their split budget and whatnot. Economically, let's go ahead and look. We have the greatest economy in the world. something over double Austria's, double the Netherlands, so we're doing very well economically. Not as well proportionately with our armies, although we are really a naval power, so that makes a bit of sense. And yeah, just Austria, Netherlands, Commonwealth, Bengal, Ottomans. Those seem to be the big ones. It's interesting that the Ottomans have managed to stay so relevant despite losing all of their peripheral territories, in part to us. And let's see, what other ledger tab should we look into? If we go by country, let's see, development, we are just over 3 times better in development than Austria. Better than Austria, the Commonwealth, Ottomans, Great Britain, and probably Bengal added together. Then there's Tunis, who is our vassal. So we are doing very well development-wise. Max manpower shows us being very low on the list, below even Tuscany. So we are very wise to be using as many mercenaries as we are. Since we have the largest army in the world and nowhere near the largest manpower reserve, those mercenaries really do help us round out the numbers. Score comparison, we are making the most score, as makes quite a bit of sense. And yeah, overall, I think that basically sums more or less everything up. I can't think of anything that I may have forgotten to look at. Oh, yes, let's look at religions. Mayan is the largest religion in the world, followed by Catholic, then Sunni, then Confucianism. We have 5 countries that are Mayan compared to 26 Catholics, 18 Sunnis, although I guess that doesn't really matter nearly so much as provinces. It would be interesting to see how much development was controlled by each religion. I imagine that Catholics may still be ahead in that regard if that was accounted for. There are also the Protestants, and probably somewhere further down the Orthodox. Just the Protestants alone would put the various Christian groups above us and our Mayan religion. At any rate, we are solidly the second most powerful religious group in the world, and only going to expand as we have quite a bit of heretical elements to convert within our and our vassals' countries. And that is not to assume that they will expand even further if we do make a time-lapse out of this. Another interesting bit is Faroese Balkans, which is just kind of interesting. Theodoro is also doing well, although they have migrated, although they are a Gothic people, so I guess that makes some sort of sense. Although I don't even think they have any Goths in their culture anymore, so they might very well have culture converted. Alright. Well, with that all said and done, thank you very much for following me and following this series to the very end. We have gone quite a long way. We've taken our tiny little state of the Mayan culture, turned it into the Mayan state, and used it to dominate several continents, not just the 2 which we are the only force in, but also a few others. So once again, thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll probably be doing something in Hearts of Iron 4 next. Although, to be honest, I played around with that game a little bit, and I have no idea what I'm doing, so it might be a little while. I'll try to get it out by Wednesday, so there's no obvious lack of content. And I will also try to make a time-lapse out of this one. The only reason I wouldn't is because it is an Iron Man game, and I'm not sure if I'd have to break Iron Man in order to make a time-lapse from it, but I'll see if I can't do that. I'll also make a quick time-lapse up out of the timeline views. So thanks again for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day. We'll be back with Hearts of Iron 4 and hopefully some time lapses.